Dear guests, we are starting from our first panel, which is called Chinese Communist Party and the World. And it is my honor to represent you Dr. Zheng Yuntian. He is the director of the World Socialism Institute from Renmin University of China. Dear Dr. Zheng Yuntian, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sahakyan. Thank you for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. What if? It's really a privilege to be here amongst this distinguished group of academics and educators. It's my great honor to make this presentation. So let me express my sincere gratitude to the organizers of this great conference, especially in this significant 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. I will serve as a modest spur to induce today's guests to come forward with your valuable contributions. And now I will share the slides. Due to be inspired by the address of Xi Jinping yesterday, I will adjust my topic and contents a little bit and present 5 points. So the new topic will be 5 inspirations on the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. And I will use CPC for short during my speech. The contents are 5 points. There are 1 theme, 2 examinations, 3 nevers, 4 commitments, and 5 keys. From 1 to 3 are based on Xi Jinping's address, and the 4 commitments is my research, and that's the previous topic. And the 5 keys is according to the fresh new report published by Xinhua News Agency just a few days ago. First one is 1 theme. As Xi Jinping said, the CPC has united and led the Chinese people over the past 100 years has been tied together by 1 ultimate theme, bringing about the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The CPC and the Chinese people, through tenacious struggle, have shown the world that China's national rejuvenation has become a historical inevitability. And 2 examinations. On the one hand, handing in a great and outstanding answer sheet to the first 100-year exam. The CPC has secured extraordinary historical achievements on the behalf of the people. And on the other hand, stepping on the new road of the second 100-year exam, the CPC is rallying and leading the Chinese people on a new journey toward realizing the centenary goal. And 3 nevers is a very powerful and steady announcement. Xi Jinping said, "We have never bullied, oppressed, or subjugated the people of any other country, and we never will. But by the same token, we will never allow any foreign force to bully, oppress, or subjugate us." And next one is 4 commitments. The world today is marked by changes of a kind unseen in a century. Stepping into the new era, China has been increasingly presenting herself as a responsible global power that is deeply committed to the welfare of the international community. First is openness and development. It reflects China's profound thinking of upholding a new version of globalization. After lifting the final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line out of impoverishment, China in 2020 brought to an end, once and for all, the absolute poverty that had shackled the Chinese nation for thousands of years. McKinsey & Company predicted that by 2022, more than 75% of urban Chinese households will have an annual disposable income of 60,000 to 229,000 yuan. China's middle class has been expanding at an astonishing rate. Second is win-win cooperation and mutually beneficial collaboration. It emphasizes China's strategic determination of rebuilding the international order. From the Tanzania-Zambia Railway several decades ago to the Belt and Road today, the path of common development for all countries around the world, which the CPC adheres to, extends ever forward. The CPC remains committed to open development and mutually beneficial cooperation, and rejects the zero-sum game and winner-takes-all. It lends new impetus to the pursuit of common prosperity and comprehensively facilitates global development. Third is peace and security. It reflects China's humanistic concern of promoting a harmonious world. Throughout modern history, China, led by the CPC, is the only major country to have embarked upon the path of prosperity without resorting to military expansion or colonial plunder. This has established a new model of peaceful development for major countries, setting a fine example. Fourth one is shared fate and future. It highlights China's solemn commitment of facing global challenges with the entire international society. Chinese and foreign scholars believe that the vision of a community with a shared future for mankind is a major theoretical innovation that goes beyond the differences of country, race, and system in improving the global governance system and promoting sustainable development and the progress of human society. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, "The United Nations welcomes China's positive participation in global governance and expects China to make even greater contributions to the building of a more harmonious world." And the last part is 5 keys. I want to share this research report with you. It was published on June the 28th. The title is People First. In this report, it said that the secret of the CPC's success can be described in 5 English letters. That's A, B, C, D, E. A is all for the people. Standing on the people's side represents the fundamental political stance of the CPC, and it is what distinguishes a Marxist political party from other political parties. As Xi Jinping said, we have talked a lot about our purpose, and it all boils down to one sentence: serving the people. And B is blueprint drawing. The CPC has shown its proficiency in planning long-term goals and breaking them down into phases, honoring its commitment to the people by implementing specific targets. China has formulated and implemented 13 5-year plans since 1953. At present, the country has already entered the 14th 5-year planned period. Robert Engel, a Nobel laureate economist from the United States, said, "While China is making 5-year plans for the next generation, Americans are planning only for the next election." And C is capacity building. The fight against corruption is kind of self-reform. The years since the 18th National Congress of the CPC have seen the party show zero tolerance for corruption and resolutely correct misconduct in all its forms. The party has formed a power supervision network, which covers both the party's disciplinary work and the state's supervisory work, and combines the work of inspectors stationed at various posts in the government, public institutions, and state-owned enterprises, as well as that of rounds of special inspections carried out all across the board. And D is development shared. facing the monumental challenge of coordinating its epidemic response with economic and social development in 2020, China managed to resume work and production at an astonishing speed and secure its supply and industrial chains, achieving an annual GDP growth of 2.3%. Efforts such as jointly pursuing the Belt and Road Initiative and promoting South-South cooperation also attest to the CPC's vision for promoting shared and common development worldwide. And E is effective governance. The CPC has a complete setup consisting of party committees and party branches at both central and local levels, guaranteeing its centralized, unified leadership over the whole country. This enables the party to pool resources for great undertakings. These 5 aspects will serve as precious resources for the CPC's future endeavors and may also provide useful references for other political parties around the world. Now I want to share one of my favorite sentences in my life to end my speech. It was said by Mao Zedong in his famous article, which is called "The Foolish Old Man Who Removed the Mountains." It is also an idiom and ancient Chinese story. The sentence is, "We must persevere and work unceasingly, and we too will touch God's heart. Our God is none other than the masses of the Chinese people." It really shows us the true merit and pursuit of CPC in both its 100-year history and the future. So I really miss Yerevan and Armenia and sincerely hope that I can be there again someday. And thank you. Shnor Kotosin and Spasiba.
It is my pleasure to introduce you Mr. Ebrahim Hashem, strategist, consultant, and scholar from the United Arab Emirates. He is also my fellow from Asia Global Institute of University of Hong Kong. Dear Ebrahim, the floor is yours, please.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Mher Sahakyan, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this important conference. It's a pleasure and honor to be on a panel with such distinguished scholars. I'm just trying to share my screen. Let me see. All right, thank you very much one more time, Dr. Mher Sahakyan, for inviting me to this conference. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I want to take advantage of this occasion, this auspicious occasion, and congratulate the Chinese people and the members of the Communist Party of China on the centennial anniversary of the CPC. The CPC has made a lot of accomplishments, a lot of achievements over the last 100 years, but more particularly over the last 40 years. And I personally wish you all the best with the next 100 years, hopefully greater achievements in the next 100 years. Just a quick disclaimer, my views are not really representative of the views of the UAE government. I'm outside of the government. So just wanted to put that one up front. The relationship between the UAE government and the Communist Party of China is really deep. It's based on historical ties, and it's got a lot of common principles, and it's got a lot of mutual synergies. And there's also this very positive outlook for the relationship. In my discussion or my speech, I will be highlighting these 4 points: historical ties, common principles, mutual synergies, and my opinion of how the future will be for this relationship. And the historical ties, just upfront, I'm really telling you, there's this really strong and deep people-to-people relationship, and it goes back thousands of years, back to the Silk Road era. And the relationship has always been friendly, cultural, and trade-based. As far as the common principles, there are a lot of common principles in national governance, how the two countries actually govern their countries. And also there's this positive alignment in international relationships, especially over the last 5 years or even more over the last 7 years. And then the mutual synergies. These are the synergies that are really naturally, organically propelling this relationship forward. And I will be highlighting these synergies in my coming slides. And these are actually based on the principle or on the framework of 1 + 2 + 3. I will be explaining that in a moment. And the two sides are really leveraging their competitive advantages to really strengthen this relationship and also make it really mutually beneficial for both. And then the future looks positive, very positive. And there are still challenges to be managed, especially in this transitional period of time for the international system. We are really entering, or we already are in this critical transitional period of the international system. All right, so the historical ties, both sides always emphasize the long history, the ancient history of the relationship. So here I have 2 quotes. I'm not going to read everything, just here very quickly. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, said recently, the truth is that our relations did not really begin 35 years ago. So this is when UAE recognized the People's Republic of China as the official representative of the Chinese people. So that was 1984. So he says it actually goes back to thousands of years. He's alluding to Silk Road era. And also Xi Jinping himself talk about the history of this relationship. Over 2,000 years ago, numerous camel caravans from the two sides traveled along the ancient Silk Road. And Zheng He, the Chinese Muslim navigator in the Ming Dynasty, traveled to the Arabian Sea. So I'm not going to go too deep into the history. I will be really focusing on what's happening now. I'm trying to move the slides. It's not moving. Okay. All right. So again, the Silk Road, which was in the 2nd century BC, so that was really a long time ago. The connections were established. And also later, the Chinese admiral, the Muslim Chinese Admiral Zheng He, in the first half of the 15th century, he came and visited the Arabian Peninsula. He came for Al-Hajj performance, and then from there he moved to East Africa, and he established a lot of connections with different parts of the region. And the Arab navigator Ahmed ibn Majid, he's an Arab, he's an Emirati navigator. He also established connections with different people from different parts of China, and he was an expert at navigating the seas in different parts of Asia, the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. And of course, before him, it was Ibn Battuta, who visited China as the ambassador of the king at that time in India. This relationship is actually driven from the top. The leadership of both countries are really interested in further deepening this relationship, broadening it and extending it as much as possible. Recently, the president of China was given the Order of Zayed, which is the highest civilian award given to kings and presidents. And also, on the other hand, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, was given the professorship at Tsinghua University. And there's this strong bond between the leaders of the two countries. For example, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed always refers to Xi Jinping as my friend and my brother. And when he says it with a lot of sincerity. So that indicates the strong personal bond between the two leaders, or the leaders of the two countries. Now, looking at the national governance, the principles, the common principles, I will go through them very quickly. We always talk about the, the system, the Chinese system, socialism with Chinese characteristic. So this is really an adaptive system. It really adopts whatever works for the Chinese and the Chinese society. We have something similar. So we do not really just say, okay, we are officially a constitutional federation, but at the same time also we are open to all other systems, whatever works in other systems, and whatever we think will work for us, we explore it, experiment with it, and if it works, we adopt it in our system. So our society is really conservative and based on really cultural values, based on our Islamic and Arab heritage values. The same thing also for the Chinese society. It's based on Confucianism. And then looking at the relationship between the rulers and the ruled, it's really rulers, people, familiar relationship. So the rulers really look at those people within their country, within their society as part of their family. They treat them as part of the family. And the same thing, the people look up to the rulers as the head of the household or the head of the family. And I know based on my discussion with a lot of people in China, it's a similar situation or a similar relationship in China between the people and the rulers. And the economy is actually the development of the country, or the economy is really state-led development. So there are a lot of state-owned enterprises used by the government. So there's this vision, clear vision given by the government to the state-owned enterprises to go and implement. And something similar is also available in the Chinese system. So this is as far as the national governance. As far as the international relations, both countries uphold the international law and the UN Charter. And of course, the UN Charter includes the 5 principles, which China has been really touting and talking about since the 50s. Equality, mutual respect, non-aggression, and non-interference in the internal affairs of others, and peaceful coexistence. These are really the same principles that we in UAE adopt and practice in our international relations. At the same time, also, there's this high-level policy coordination. There's a lot I can talk about here, but I will just leave it at that. So there's this high-level policy coordination between the two sides, really at the very high level between the two countries. And also, it's always win-win cooperation on development, investment, and trade. So it's really mutually beneficial relationship between UAE and China, and close cultural and people-to-people exchanges between the two sides. Here, I want to show you this very quick chart. Here, just to highlight one important year, and that year was 1993, when China became a net exporter of, or not net importer of oil. So that was the year when the gap between the production and the consumption was really just, widening. And that was the year when China, or the Chinese government, CPC, started actually thinking about how to really ensure that the energy imports are actually safely coming to the country. And at the same time also, I want to highlight the trade of China, and China is the biggest trading country on planet Earth. If we just put the trade in world merchandise with the services, China is really representing around 14%. And UAE, comparatively, well, UAE is a very small country. Our economy is one of the top 30, not really in the top 10 or 20, but UAE is actually one of the top, in terms of trade, one of the top 20 countries in the world. So we are really a trading hub. And this is not really something recent. It's not really since we were established as a country in 1971. It's been like this for a long period of time. That's why we have this connection with the Silk Road, more than 2,000 years ago. And if you just look at it, UAE is a very small country, right? So we are around 10 million people. And we have 1.4% of the world trade. And if you compare it with Brazil, which has more than 200 million people, we are actually trading more than Brazil is doing. So that gives you an indication that it's true that we are rich in oil and gas, but at the same time also, we do not really heavily rely on oil and gas. And I don't know whether this is going to surprise you or not. Our actually oil GDP is less than 30%. It's less than 30%. So more than 70% of our GDP is non-oil, and trading, exporting and re-exporting is an important part of that. And now just looking at the cooperation framework, it's 1 + 2 + 3. Very briefly, 1 means the core of this relationship is energy. That's why you have energy consumer. China is the largest energy or the largest oil importer. UAE is one of the top oil exporters. And then number 2, so +2, 2 refers to infrastructure, trade, and investment. So these are the 2 wings of this relationship. And then you have 3. 3 refers to innovation, technology, and the digital Silk Road. And these are basically the sectors where the 2 sides want to make breakthroughs. Very briefly, UAE is rich in oil, one of the top in terms of oil and gas reserves in the world. China is big in renewables technologies, the biggest solar panels producer, the biggest producer of wind turbines. UAE is geographically strategically located. So we are really like a trading hub, import, export, and re-export. UAE also has really top-notch, world-class infrastructure and logistics services. At the same time, China, as I mentioned earlier, is the top trading nation in the world. And China and UAE, UAE being a gateway to Africa, to East Europe, and to the rest of the MENA region, UAE and China have this synergy, huge synergy. And of course, recently, China has become one of the top leaders in technology, and telecommunications technology is one of the biggest areas of collaboration between the 2 countries. And as you know, China is now the top IP patent filer in the world. It has already overtaken the United States in terms of IP patent applications. Now, finally, the future. What is the future? As you know, we are going through some profound changes, a huge, tremendous transformation that we haven't actually seen in more than 100 years. So whatever we have been used to over the last, let's say, 70 years post World War II, this is going to be, all indications tell us this is going to be upended. And a new international system is actually being born now. And hopefully this is not going to be, so the new international system is not going to be born with a lot of difficulties. And we already are in this transitional period. And this transitional period is critically sensitive, very delicate, because you have certain powers losing power, so certain countries losing power, and they are actually relatively losing it to the newcomers, to the new powers that are emerging from different parts of the world, but specifically from Asia. When I say newcomers, I should actually correct myself. China is not a newcomer. China is actually a returning world power. It's coming back to its rightful place, which it lost around the middle of the 19th century. And for us, it's really exciting because we are a trading nation. We are this hub of logistics and trade. And China being the biggest trading country in the world, we will be benefiting from China's rise, and we will be having a mutually beneficial relationship between us and China. Let me just give you 3 quotes. I started with quotes, and I will be ending my presentation with 3 quotes. The first one is, the 2 sides. So this is a quote from Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. So he says, what we are doing now in terms of strengthening the relationship between China and UAE, we are actually laying the pillars of a roadmap for the next 100 years. So we are not thinking about the next couple of years. We're thinking about the next 100 years in terms of our relationship with China. The second quote is by Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China. The UAE will become a shining pearl along the Belt and Road Initiative. I didn't talk about it, but this is a good indication of how the Chinese think about the UAE. And the final one, the very final quote that I'm going to be ending my presentation with, is by the Vice President of UAE, the Prime Minister. He says, the power and future are moving to the east, meaning China. That's why China will lead the world economically. And who leads the world economically will lead the world. Thank you very much.
And let's move to Dr. Ma Bin, Associate Professor at the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies, Institute of International Studies, Fudan University. So, dear Ma Bin, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mher, and thank you very much, the Armenia Academy of Sciences, and thank you, Chinese Embassy, Armenia, and all the other peoples who help our conference. And I have a PowerPoint to share with you, but okay. Thank you very much. And my presentation is about the role of CPC in the work of reducing poverty. And as we know, the CPC just celebrated its 100th anniversary yesterday, and there are a lot of discussions about the achievements of the CPC and how CPC got these achievements in the different stages and the different times, and in economics, in political systems, a lot of things. And my topic is about the role of the CPC in the work of reducing the poverty. And our panel's topic is about the CPC and the world. As we know, the CPC is a product of Chinese people learning from the West. They're learning from the other world about how to get strong, how to get prosperous since the 1 century ago. And when the CPC was founded 1 century ago, it became more and more important political force in China's development, and especially after the founding of the Republic of China, People's Republic of China in 1940s. But if we look at this topic, I mean the Chinese people learn from the world and learn the modern, learn how to build the modern country. At the time will be longer than the 1 century. And as we know, usually we make the start point from the middle of 19th century. And because of the almost half a century's learning and searching, the Chinese people practiced a lot of ways, a lot of the other ways about how to solve those days problem, like the different intervention by the European countries, like the European emperors and the other emperors. They invade China, how to solve this problem and how to get strong and how to get wealth. That's the main problem of, that's the main purpose or main problem of the Chinese people faced in the past 1.5 centuries, in the past 1.5 centuries. So that's the very important topic when we talk about China's development, especially how China enter into the modern China, from the traditional China into the modern China. So I choose this topic. And in this year's February, China celebrates its China hold a celebrate conference about complete the task of ending extreme poverty. And according to the data of the Chinese government, we have the Chinese have reduced 98 million poor people in the rural area, and that means 832 counties in China, and 1,280,000 villages in China. Then it's a great achievement for Chinese people and for Chinese people and for China's modernization. And the 98 million people is a very large population, and this achievements we can make a compare of this achievements. And in 1990, the Chinese poor population is 36% of the world, and the other countries the poor population is was 64%. But China is the biggest country in that time. But in 1915 and in 1915 is important time point for the China's poverty reducing, and compared with the 1990, China have the poor population in China is 36.2% of the whole population, and 66.3% of Chinese people is the poverty population. Poverty population according to the UN standards, and in that year, the people of the world is 36.2% of the whole population, but China is 66.3%, almost double of the world level. But in 2015, the China's poverty population is only 0.7%, but the world is the 10.1%. So according to this comparison, we can have a very abstract image about China's achievements. But if we look at this chart, we can see the bigger progress, the faster progress in the past past 10 years. In 2012, China's poverty population is 98 more than 98 million people. But in last year, as we mentioned in the early in the start point, we have the Chinese government announced that we have completed the task of ending the extreme poverty. That means we have no extreme poverty, but it's not mean we don't have the poverty, just means the extreme poverty, extreme poverty. And but that's the reason why I have this conclusion, because according in the past 4 decades, China have different standards of the poverty and those standards is different with the UN standards. In 1986, the annual income is 206 yuan. Is the according to China standards is annual income is 206 yuan, and according to these standards, the Chinese poverty population is 125 million people in 1986, And in 2001, China have new standards of the poor people. The annual income is 865 yuan RMB. According to these standards, the Chinese poor people is 94 millions. But in 2011, China have a new standard of the poor people. Is the annual income is 2,300. According to this new standard, the Chinese population, the poor people in the Chinese population is 122 millions. According to this chart, we can see the change in the past several decades, and these standards is not same as the UN standards, but is Chinese government made this own standards about how to evaluate the poor people, how to recognize the poor people. And according to this chart, we can see in the different stages, the Chinese government improved the standards according to the economic development and the other social standards. And I think it's progress for the different times. And in last year, the Chinese government issued the white paper and how China gets to get those achievements. And according to those white paper, the strategy, the Chinese have several strategies of targeted poor elevation. The first is identifying people in need to know whom to help. The second is strengthening leadership and team building to know how to offer help. The third is applying targeted measures for different groups of know how to help. The fourth is adopting strategic criteria to know when and how to disregister those who have emerged from poverty. The fifth is conducting follow-up monitoring to help people stay out of poverty. According to those 5 strategies, actually we can see this white paper actually targeted several W and whom, how, when, and those key elements of how to reducing the poverty. And this is the government's white paper about the poverty elevation in the past several decades. And according to those white paper, they said the key factor of this poverty elevation is the government investments to help the poor programs. From this chart, we can see from 2013 to 2020, the government investments to help the poor is increased very, very fast. The black one is the central government investment. The gray one is the local government's investment to those programs. And we can see this fast increase in the past several years, and this is the basis of the poverty elevation in the past several years. The second factor is the leadership of the Communist Party of China, and we can look back several decades about the CPC thinking about help the poor in history. Before the founding of the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong means, as you know, the Chairman Mao, the poverty said, the poverty of China caused by the system of semi-colonial and federal society, the only way to solve the problem of China is to build the new regime. Mao said, most meaning is the socialist system is the main way to solve the poor problem in China. In 1955, Chairman Mao have a new words and a new announcement about the poverty, reducing the poverty in China, and they called the prosperity for all. But in that time, those programs mainly focused on the rural area. In 1970s, Deng Xiaoping, as you know, is the second leadership of China in that times. He said, the poverty is not the socialism. Socialism means eliminating poverty, and this is the beginning. This was Zheng said is in the time of China's new stage of open and reform policy, and this new thinking is showed us how the CPC think about the poverty problem, how to reduce the poverty in that time. In that time, Deng also said the essence of the socialism is to liberate and develop the productivity forces and finally achieve common prosperity. In that time, Deng, in the beginning of the open and reform policy, Deng also mentioned the achieve of the common prosperity, and this proposal not only covered the rural area and is also covered the urban areas. That means all areas poverty reducing is the target of the CPC's tasks. And the process of those poverty, of those reducing the poverty, since the open and reform policy, we can have several important times. The first is the 1986. In 1986, China began to implement a planned, organized, and a large-scale poverty alleviation program in rural area. The second is 1994. The CPC Central Committee and the State Council declared the new national program for poverty alleviation. This is the first 7 years program for the poverty alleviation. The third is into the since the new century. In the new century, the most important part is shifted to speeding group poverty alleviation and prosperity. In the new century, the first important years is the 2000 2002. In that year, the Chinese government and the CPC announced the increased support for all the revolutionary basis areas, the ethnic areas, border areas, and the poverty-stricken areas. They focus on the difficult areas of poverty alleviation and put more resources in those kinds of areas. The second important year of the poverty alleviation in the new century is 2007. In October 2007, President Hu Jintao pointed out in the report of the 17th National Congress of the Communist Party of China that reform and opening up have enabled the people's livelihood to develop from insufficient food and clothing to Xiaokang, and the rural poor population has been reduced from more than...
Last minute, please.
Okay, I will make my my conclusion very fast. And the third is the 2011 is also focused on the rural poverty alleviation, and the last one is 2012 is fully in place of a precise strategy for poverty reducing poverty. And the second topic I want to mention is a working mechanism to the process of reducing the poverty. For China's CPC, we have 3 levels mechanism. The first is CPC Central Committee. This making overall plan of the reducing poverty. The second level is the Province Committee. And they take all responsibility and take all factors into consideration. The third level is the city or county committee. They are the implemented specific programs. Those 3 levels mechanism is the basis for the CPC to conduct its a strategy of reducing poverty. So simply conclusion is 3 conclusions. The first is help the poor is one of the main guiding thoughts of the CPC. The second is CPC has made different strategies according to the main tasks in different stages. Third is working mechanisms is the basis of CPC implementing a strategy of reducing poverty. Okay, that's my simple presentation for my topic. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. We are starting our questions and answer session. I have a common question for Dr. Yuntian and Dr. Bin, and it is, what do you think? Which are the main 3 security issues for modern China?
Hi, Dr. Mahesh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. In my opinion, these 3 security issues are the food security, the energy security, and the environment security. Maybe some people think that military or the ideology security is very essential right now. But in my opinion, the fundamental elements for the Chinese people, especially in modern China, are food, energy, and environment. These 3 aspects need both development and cooperation. The first one is food. We all must eat to survive, but in some levels, some kind of industries and resources are controlled by transnational enterprises. That can be a threat to a national security. So the Chinese leaders realize that and take measures on it. And the second aspect is the energy security. China depends on traditional energy for many decades, and now we are trying to use more new energy like solar, nuclear, water, and so on to let us be more green. And we need more cooperation to spread our energy, to solve our energy problem. And that's why the Belt and Road Initiative is meaningful to both China and the countries that belongs to this initiative. And the third aspect is the environmental issue. President Xi Jinping has promised that China will fulfill carbon neutrality in 2060, and that is a very big target, and it's a very important task for modern China. And this environment issue is relative to both food and energy. So these 3 aspects, in my opinion, is the 3 security issues for modern China right now. And that's my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bin. Do you have something to add on what Dr. Yuntian said?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mher and Dr. I think besides Professor Zheng said, I want to make a implementation. The first, for my understanding, the key issue is there's the other key issue is the balancing between the domestic and the international. And as we know, in the past several years, especially from last year, China, in the background of the pandemic, the economic communication, also the social communication in different countries was shut down or was blocked. So from my understanding, the other key issue for the security, for the development, or the other things is keep the balance of the domestic and the international community. More specifically, in the short term, the main issue is the balance in the economic issues. As we know, there are a lot of economic relations, are not a lot of economic connections was cut off, and the recovering of different countries' economy after the pandemic is the key issue for most of the countries, and maybe it's for every countries. So in this background, how to keep the balance of between the China and the other countries is very important. For China is how to keep the balance between the domestic economic development and the international economic cooperation. And the other is for the society. I mean, more specifically is the people-to-people exchange between China and the other countries. Because of the pandemic, there's our conference, our panel was in the online panel, and it's important, and thanks for the new technology, we can have this kind of way for our discussion. But as we know, for our academic studies, all the people's communication, the field work, the face-to-face is more important and more effective for our communications. So because of the pandemic, this kind of face-to-face connection was cut off. And I think in the near future, these have to be recovered. And because if this kind of shutdown continued too long, there must be more and more misunderstanding among different countries, among different communities, different societies. I think this is the second one. Okay, that's my supplement for Professor Zheng's discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I will have also question for Mr. Hashem, and after we will collect questions from audience as well. Mr. Hashem, we know that China and UAE are cooperating in digital Silk Road and in health Silk Road. Can you give us some details about this cooperation? Thank you.
So UAE and China are comprehensive strategic partners. So they have this really comprehensive strategic partnership, and they have been really deepening their relationships and collaborating and cooperating in various sectors. And as mentioned earlier by Professor Zheng Yuntian, energy is the core sector for China and also for us, because China wants to secure a supply of energy to its economy. And from our side, our perspective is to really secure the market. So this is really the example, a perfect example of a win-win collaboration. And as far as the other sectors, we have been recently collaborating with the Chinese companies in the area of the healthcare and health sector. And of course, as you know, after the pandemic, we needed a lot of support with vaccine and with containment, virus containment, COVID-19 containment systems and techniques. And the Chinese were gratefully really helpful to us in that area. And as you know, we recently started the production of vaccines in here in UAE, Sinopharm. So that's another example. And one more example is related to the 5G technology with Huawei. So Huawei is a major telecommunications company, and it's been welcomed in our telecommunications sector simply because it's the best in terms of technology, and also it provides us with the best value. And that's why we find that relationship, that partnership, win-win. One thing I want to just really highlight here, the speech given by President Xi Jinping, I actually watched it entirely, and I actually enjoyed it. I was inspired by it. One quote that I actually got from that speech, and it caught my attention. It was about, he said, "We Chinese, we do not have aggressive hegemonic traits in our genes." And this is something really obvious and very visible in the way the Chinese actually approach their relations with us, with UAE and the rest of the countries in our region. And we highly appreciate that. And the non-interference of the Chinese in our internal affairs is something really highly appreciated. And actually, before that speech, one day before it, I was invited to attend the speech given by the Chinese ambassador in UAE, His Excellency Ni Qiang. And there we had a very interesting conversation, the speech. So the two speeches really inspired me after a long period of time being quarantined and so on and so forth. They inspired me to really come to our conference today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions here? If yes, please. Please, Dr. Manasyan.
Thank you. I have a question to Dr. Ebrahim Hashem. I want you presented the strengths and opportunities in China and United Arab Emirates relations. Just to have a more comprehensive picture, I want to know, are there any weaknesses and challenges in China-United Arab Emirates relations, especially given also the great power competition between United States and China globally, and also United Arab Emirates traditional alliance with United States? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. That's a very, very important question. That's true. Maybe one thing that I did not really highlight in my presentation, the challenges that we are actually facing in this relationship, the relationship between UAE and China. As you know, the great power competition is actually intensifying, not only in Asia, it's not only in East Asia, the area of Japan, South Korea, and the rest of East Asia, but also it's been extended to West Asia in our region, and we are really mindful of it. And I don't know whether you have seen the news recently. There have been calls to us, official calls, very straightforward calls, to really rethink, quote unquote, rethink our partnership in the telecommunications sector with the Chinese companies, and that is basically based on quote unquote security risk. And of course, we have our own evaluation of security risk, and we really weigh the risk, and we decide based on our national interests. So the intensifying great power competition is one big challenge, and we have to have the right balance between China and the United States, especially United States being the key security partner since the end of World War II. The other challenge is related to the regional rivalry that we have, and that is more related to China and how China is going to be managing that challenge. And of course, as you know, in our region, we have a lot of countries that are really vying for power in the region. And China, because China is establishing relationships with different countries in the region, China is careful and is trying to really have the right balance between the different countries. For example, Iran and Saudi Arabia, and these are two regional rivalries. And speaking with Chinese friends and colleagues, the Chinese are trying not to be viewed too close to either side, the Iranians or the Saudis. And I have to say, in my opinion, the Chinese government has been doing a brilliant job having the right balance between them, between China and Iran on the one hand, and China and Saudi Arabia on the other hand. If you look at the numbers, the trade volumes between the two, Iran and China, increasing. At the same time, also the trade volume between China and Saudi Arabia is also increasing. So that means the Chinese are doing a good job managing this regional rivalry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? If no, let me thank our speakers. Thank you very much that you have found time to be at our conference. Thank you. And we will start our next session from 2 minutes. And I want to introduce Dr. Ruben El-Amilian, who is one of the best Armenian scholars in the field of international relations. He has published many works in the leading international journals and books. He wrote many book chapters, so we are very proud of him. He will chair the next panel. Dr. El-Amilian, the floor is yours. From 2 minutes, you can start on it.
Thank you, Mr. Sahakyan.